Hi, it's the Love Guru Blair, and welcome to the Awakened Warrior. Warriors Unite! This is the show where I talk about current news stories and give my spiritual and psychological take on it, all for the purpose of awakening, educating, enlightening, and empowering the collective. So today, for the last 3 hours, yes, 3 hours, I have been trying to connect with my interviewee, Tyrone, who was a victim of direct energy weaponry. And I'm excited for him to share his story about how this technology made him do some crazy things, and one of those things is spend millions and millions of his dollars. Now, in trying to connect with him to do this, we have experienced crazy, ridiculous technology issues. Now, today is June 6, 2014, and tomorrow Mercury goes direct. So for you spiritual people out there, you know that technology issues have to do, sometimes, not always, with Mercury retrograde. Oh, did I say that Mercury goes direct tomorrow? I don't know what I said. I'm sorry. But Mercury goes retrograde tomorrow. So a lot of people tend to associate that with technology issues and things related. So I really don't know what to make of these issues that we're having. Basically, they're on his side. He's unable to connect to Google+, and he's kind of downloaded it and rebooted and booted and rebooted, and even connected through his phone, and then had to change internet connections. And we've just been jumping through hoops all, I guess it's all afternoon. It's been, like I said, for 3 hours already. So we were finally just connected, and I was going to do the interview, and he was finally connected through his phone. He was going to do the interview, which was not the best quality, like audio and visual, but I would take it because we've been trying at this for so long. And then I said, okay, let me just go use the restroom really quick before we get started, because I'm assuming I'm going to speak to him for an hour. And I come back, and he's like, my phone is red, it's going to shut down, it's overheating. And I said, I know that you're joking, very funny, whatever. He's like, yo, I'm not joking. And then 2 minutes later, he got disconnected. He was shut off when we finally were able to have him connected to Google+. So the reason why I'm sharing all of this about the technical issues is that if you do any research about this mind control, if you speak to or you listen to any interviews about MK Ultra victims, MILAB victims, I guess now this direct energy weaponry victims, which I haven't heard it. I haven't heard anyone speak about what Tyrone's going to share with us, and we are going to get this interview. We're both determined. We've been, like I said, we've been working at this for 3 hours now. But I wonder if this is a side effect of what they used on him. Oh, here he is. Maybe he's joining us. I see his picture. Oh my God, there you are. I just did like a little introduction. Holy
and
shit,
I missed
Tyrone.
I missed the entire introduction.
That's okay. What I was talking about was how whenever you hear the story, one second, let me close out my email because I was keeping that open in case you were going to reach me there.
All right.
And let me just see what else, other windows open I need to close. Okay. So whenever I have listened to an MK Ultra victim tell their story, they say on how when they try to tell their story, they get really tired, or they forget parts of it, or there's like technology issues that they're kind of like blocked. It's in the programming that they can't share their story. So do you think that that's some kind of something that's happened to you as well? Because I mean, like I said, 3 hours of technology issues, that's a big, and we were like, you were trying all different ways of connecting.
Well, you know, that's part of keeping yourself sane. You know, some people, they overanalyze what's going on. The issues we were having earlier with the technology was just, you know, problems people have. Now, as far as the blocking of memory and all of that, it's not in the programming to say. It's more so when, while you're trying to tell your story, they'll use the directed energy weapons against you, and they can block patterns of your thought. You know, just because your brain is firing off neurons and, you know, the basic the electrical waves that are going through your body, they're able to stop those. So, you know, they're not really forgetting. They're just not allowed to say anything. You know, they can completely cut off you from speaking. They can be able to imagine, but they can also implant images in your mind and thoughts in your mind. So, I mean, it's a very confusing way of life. You know, if you don't know yourself, you can get caught up in a whole lot of stuff.
Okay, so we're going to get into all of this stuff, but basically what was just happening with us and you trying to get on, you're chalking that up to like, hey, that's just normal technology issues, and that you don't think, like, okay, so let me just ask off the bat, and then I'll do your introduction, because I didn't introduce you just yet, because I didn't know if you were going to be able to join us. So, so you're saying that when people are MK Ultra victims, that it's not part of their programming to not be able to tell their story, but that it's that there's some kind of technology that's being used on them? Or you're saying that's just for you, that if maybe
I'm saying for me and for a lot of victims, there is the technology is being used against you to where you can't speak, to where you know, they're using these extra low frequency waves. And, you know, when they're using those particular waves, you really, you know, you can't speak. Sometimes they make you say things that you don't want to say. They're calling those things hiccups. And, you know, they can inflict pain to where you just about don't even want to tell your story, you know?
Okay, so let me do the introduction, but I just have like a yes or no question before we go into this. Are they still using this stuff on you?
Every now and then, I still am dealing with the directed energy weaponry attacks.
Okay.
You know, I can still feel the vibration some days going through my body. I still sometimes hear the person speaking to me, you know, every now and then. But it's not an all day, every day.
Okay. So just with the viewers and just to acknowledge, we still are having some technical difficulties. Tyrone's video kind of jumped out for a minute, and then he was reappearing. So again, we're just going to roll with it, like I said, because this has been going on for a while, and I do want him to be able to share his story, and I want to bring this to you guys, and I'm curious about it too, because just as a disclaimer, Tyrone and I have not spoken before this about the details of his story. Every time he tried to tell me something, I was like, no, leave it for the show, because I want it to be fresh. I want to hear everything the same time as the viewer, and I want to decide for myself, because again, unfortunately, or fortunately, we're at a time that everybody collectively, we're taking back our power. So what that means is every time you hear someone tell their story or you see an incident happen, you know, we talk a lot about the false flags and the hoaxes, again, whatever you want to call it, I use those words interchangeably. You have to decide for yourself whether you think these news stories are real, whether you think people coming forth, sharing their stories, are telling you their truth. And I'm going to decide that on my own as we're hearing Tyrone speak, and I want to encourage you, because you're going to see me, you know, maybe you'll make assumptions like, oh, Blair's believing him, and maybe that's not what you're believing. So I want you to have your own experience, and try not to be swayed by how I'm believing his story or not believing his story, okay? Tyrone, are you still there? Okay. He might have stepped out for a minute, which means technical difficulties. I still do see his picture. Let's do the introduction of him, okay? Because I'm just going to make the assumption that he is coming back on. So let me read. This is from his website. Satellite Electronic Harassment Awareness, and the website is sehawareness.com, okay? So you can check out about him. All right, he just dropped off, so again, hopefully, and we're going to make an assumption that he's going to come back because this has just been the way of the day. All right, So Tyrone Alexander Dew's 30 years of personal experiences combating torturously tormenting directed energy weaponry attacks. He has a personal mission to raise awareness about the virtually untraceable crimes committed against humanity. I'm just taking this off his website, just sharing as an introduction. He had millions of dollars taken from him due to whoever was using this technology as a weapon against him. They would inflict pain upon him until he did what the person speaking to him told him to do. He describes the torturous events such as I would feel as if my brain was being electrocuted, as I heard a person speaking to me saying, "You know I can make it stop," then they would make the pain stop. The person speaking to me would begin re-inflicting the pain and say, "If you want me to make it stop, go to a car lot, a restaurant, a strip club, a nightclub," and the person speaking to me would tell me what to buy. Whenever I tried not spending or spending very little, whoever was speaking to me would begin re-inflicting the pain until they were satisfied with the amount I spent, forcing me to be broke. The feeling of my brain being electrocuted could be the effects of dangerous volumes of sound waves. Okay, so this is called directed energy weapons or satellite directed energy weaponry. And at this point, we are ready to speak to Tyrone again. So if he can magically appear like he did before, and maybe what I'll have to do is just edit this, splice it together somehow. But he shares here some patents that were put through the U.S. government, which I think gives a lot of credibility, research that he did. Voice-to-skull U.S. patent 6,470,214. Voice-to-skull is a copy of an earlier technology, the Neurophone U.S. patent, and then he shares the number. These technologies, in layman terms, are capable of being satellite delivered, making a person hear sound directly in their brain. He has another patent here, which is called remote neural monitoring. And in this is from April 20th, 1976. So guys, this technology has been around for a really long time. This is nothing new. In layman terms, this technology is capable of sending visual images of anything to the brain. And then he has one other, actually two more, method and apparatus for producing swept frequency modulated audio signal patterns for inducing sleep. Again, he shares the pattern. This is from January 23rd, 1973. A method of producing sound signals for inducing sleep. In layman terms, this technology is capable of forcing a person to go to sleep. And then the fourth patent, U.S. patent, silent subliminal presentation system cloning emotions. This is from October 27th, 1992. In layman terms, this technology is capable of cloning any emotion possible, and when satellite delivered, can make humans feel these synthetic emotions as if they're genuine. Very interesting. So this is 4 patents that he did research on, and I guess all these were used on him, which is really scary stuff. So, Tyrone. Poof! Let's see you reappear. We'll have to just wait a minute for those of you guys who are watching live, and we'll see when he comes back here. If not, we'll start the video anew. But he's been back and forth all day. We'll see what the story is. So what I do want to speak to him about is not only his experience, but I'd like for him to weigh in. He has some things to say about the D.C. Navy Yard shooting, which that was Aaron Alexis, which was what happened a couple months ago. This was in 2013, and that 20 people were shot dead and 3 were injured. You've heard me share that this was a false flag. Same thing with the another thing that happened in D.C., the Capitol shooting of Miriam Carey. And this was about a dental hygienist who drove down from Connecticut, supposedly, down to Washington. I don't know, she was driving erratically by the White House. and supposedly she hit a cop, and then they shot her, I think it was like 5 times in the back of her head, and then we find out later that her kid was in the back of the car. Now, Tyrone has things to say about this because he feels that both of these people were under direct energy weaponry attacks. So at the end of the interview, we'll have him weigh in about that. So once again, we'll just kind of hang out, and we'll see when he rejoins us. Let me pull up my my other account just to see if he is sending me a text or something or other, which I don't see anything. So, I mean, now when we're experiencing this technology stuff, you heard his take on it. Hey, this is stuff that happens to normal, everyday people, that there's technology issues. This is something that I invited you to do in the beginning. You have to ask yourself, what do you think? Do you think that he's having a lot of issues getting on this interview because he's not supposed to be sharing his story, because he has some programming in him, or maybe he still is under the effects that he's not able to share his story with us today? Is that the issue, or do you think this is just normal everyday technology things? Let me tell you something. I have been in contact with him since 12 o'clock today, trying for us to connect on here. It is now 3:20. Okay, so that's 3 hours and 20 minutes that we've been trying to do the interview. So you have to decide for yourself, do technology issues last that long, that kind of issue? Is this the influence of Mercury retrograde? He's back again, maybe. Let's see. Tyrone, are you there?
Hello.
We just keep going and going and going.
But I'm not. You guys are going to think that I'm doing this on purpose, but it's not me. I'm telling you.
I told them, I go, you guys decide for yourself. You know, that's how we're going through. I said, you know, I'm listening to this story for the first time myself, and that I still want everyone to decide for themselves if they're believing this, if they're not. That's the error that we're in our world, since all these false flags and things. We don't know who to believe. We have to check into our own intuition. So,
hell no, you don't know who to believe. There are people who are supposed to be trying to help us who aren't really trying to help us. You know, people who are claiming to be, you know, helpers in trying to bring awareness to this, and they really don't want to help us either. You know, and they're keeping the public in the dark about this. You know, which really isn't cool.
Right, agree. So let me just bring you up to speed. I read your bio from your website. I read about the patents, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later. I gave your website address, and I also shared on how we're going to talk about the D.C. shooting, the Navy Yard shooting, and Miriam Carey, that incident. I want to get your take on both of those towards the end of the interview after you share your story, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so let's get started. When has this, first off, how old are you now? Let's do that. Let's start.
I'm 33.
Okay. Now, when did this start with you?
When I was about 3 to 5 years old, that's when I began hearing the person speaking to me. They would start describing things around me in my neighborhood, things in my house. When someone would walk through my door, they would tell me who's actually walking through my door before the person walked through my door. You know, when I was at school, they would, you know, we play hide and seek. I had an advantage. I really had an advantage over all the other kids, because this person speaking to me to gain my trust would tell me where these other kids were. So that's when I knew I wasn't crazy, and I was told, "Oh, this is a secret, you know, military experiment. And as you get older, we're going to make you a perfect agent." You know, and
wait,
my wife. Did you say?
You're breaking up a little bit, and if you could just slow down a little bit, because there's a lot to take in. I did not realize that this was happening to you from such a young age. Okay, so hold on. They said they were getting your trust, and then what were you saying?
They were gaining my trust by telling me things that would happen before they happened in my neighborhood. Like, let's say, for instance, if I'm walking down the street, they would tell me the color of a car that would be down the street before I got there. They would tell me the person's name and who they were that would walk through the front. and hide and seek.
Are you driving?
Can you hear me?
Are you driving? Yes.
I'm not supposed to tell you that.
You're not.
That's illegal.
Can you please? You see, this is the thing. Can you please pull over and we'll do the interview because you're jumping in and out, and this is what I'm wondering. Like, is there some kind of fear about telling your story?
You know what? Give 1 second. I'm getting to a place up here where I can pull over. No, the place I was at, I was actually just sitting on top of the Four Seasons enjoying my brunch. And since things weren't working out, I went and got in the car and I was getting ready to go somewhere else. But I decided to see if I can video interview you while I was in the car.
Yeah, I would just say if you...
Let me pull over.
Yeah.
Let me pull over. I'll get off on the next exit.
Okay, just because it's real choppy, and I think it's because you're picking up a satellite a connection, and then you're maybe losing it and picking up the next one, that type of thing.
I tell you what, if I had the technology they had, we would have better reception, better cell phone reception, because you can hear them no matter where you are. Doesn't really matter.
All right, so I have a question for you, okay? Now, I don't know how much you have read about me on my website. I'm psychic, so I hear, you can say people, they're not people, they're my guides and angels talking to me. And I'm wondering if this is how, okay, you don't like this question? I'm wondering if...
I don't want to say that you're not psychic. I don't want to say that. But if I had to make a guess, it would be these people using this technology, and they're giving you all of this intuition about what's going on. Seriously.
Okay, all right, so my question, though, is not about whether I'm psychic or not. My question is about whether maybe you're psychic or not.
No. There's too much evidence that proves that, the type of torturing that's going on and the way that the technology exists. So I wouldn't believe that I'm psychic or anything like that.
So, okay. So let's talk about, right from the get-go, you were hearing these voices when you were younger, and they were telling you all these things, again, which has a lot of similarities to people's experiences when they're younger if they're psychic, but we'll leave that for now. What I have a question about is that your family, do you have family members that are in the CIA, FBI, some kind of government, something?
No, I am not one of those people who has family in the CIA or government and believes that this is the reason why I'm targeted. Nope, not at all.
Okay, so when you were a little kid and you were hearing these voices in your head, and did you tell your parents, and what did they say to you?
No, I did not tell my parents because I knew that they would immediately take me to a mental institution, and there's no kind of drugs that could stop what's going on with me. The only thing that could help me is if the person speaking to me stopped. Oh.
It's okay, we still hear you. Well, now we don't. Okay. We lost him for a minute, but this is actually a good place for me to share with you guys. Well, again, I just want to share a reminder. You make up your decision throughout listening to this on what you're thinking about his story and hearing this. There are a lot of parallels when people are younger that they hear voices or they have special experiences, but I find it interesting that he never thought that he was psychic. He never went down that route, which I'm going to ask him if he ever did any exploration in that. But his reaction to things right off the bat seems like that's not even a possibility. So again, let's just stay tuned here. I'm sure he's trying to find a new spot to get a connection. So how's everybody out there? How are you doing today? I had no idea that this started at such an early age for him, which in my eyes actually makes it very suspicious if he's also saying that he doesn't have any family members. Okay, he just dropped off, but again, I'm assuming he's probably just going to close it out and click the link. But I think, and two things. I think that one, it makes it even scarier to think that they are randomly targeting people like that when they're little kids. And number two, for me, being the detective that I am, I think there has to be some kind of connection there on how they chose him, why they chose him, and something like that. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into that when he does come back. Give me 1 second. I'm going to just put up my blinds here. So, I mean, could you imagine being a victim of this from the time that you are 3 years old till when you're 33? There he is, the trooper. He just keeps on fighting back. Can you hear us, Tyrone? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So, so when you were that young, you never... Was there just not a trust between your family members to say something? How did you know that they were going to be saying? How did you know that they were going to be putting you in a mental institute if you said you heard voices? How does a kid know that?
Well, when you're out in public with your family in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, you would see people standing on the corner, and they would be talking out loud to themselves, and your family would always say, "Damn, he or she must be crazy because they're talking to themselves, hearing voices." So with me, you know, I said, you know what? I'm not going to tell anyone that I'm hearing this person speak to me. I don't even say that I'm hearing voices. I just say that I hear someone speaking to me, you know, because I know that they're having a conversation with me.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, so can you share where did you grow up? I mean, I don't need to know the town, but like...
I grew up in a Midwestern town, and if you look on the back of my book, it tells you I grew up in a small city called East St. Louis.
Okay. Was that Minnesota?
No, that's in St. Louis.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so, all right. So, okay, so you grew up around people, I guess, crazies on the street. They're telling you that your parents are telling them they're crazy, and you had no family members that have any government connection. Was anybody in the military?
No.
Okay, so looking back in this, in retrospect, why do you think that you were the one who was targeted, and also at such a young age?
Well, when I look back on it, from what they've told me, is that they started off torturing and you know, picking a few thousand people. You know, they were trying to figure out how this technology works and what they're able to do. You know, how they can manipulate the emotions, you know, and see how resilient some people are. So with me in my life, you know, consistently throughout my life, I've had success, and every time I've had some success, they've taken it away from me. So I'm not going to sit up and speculate on why. All I can say is, hey, I was targeted, and for me to sit around and try to figure out why these people did that, you know, why does any criminal do anything? You know, I don't know. You know, so I just go through life saying, hey, I've been targeted. This is what's happened to me. You can either choose to believe it or not. But several of my family members know that I was talking about this before the Aaron Alexis incident, even before Dr. John Hall published his book, and you know, any of that.
Okay, so I'm not like questioning whether you're telling the truth or whatever. I don't want you to take it like that. I happen to be a why person, which it's funny because I actually made a video earlier this morning about why something, why something with the having to do with false flags. But I just was wondering, as far as, I guess you haven't. So you think your name was just randomly picked out of a hat? Okay, we lost him again. I mean, he's part here. I see his picture. All right. I'm assuming he's going to click back there again. Well, wait a minute. What was the story? I was asking, so St. Louis is in Missouri. Wasn't that what I asked? I'm going to have to rewind the tape on that. But I think that that's what my question was, if that's where he was from, is Missouri. And he was like, no, St. Louis. So, am I off in my geography? I'm going to have to look that up. So basically he's saying that they chose a bunch of different test subjects to see how resilient they were, how they could affect them, and somehow he was picked out of a hat. I have a lot of, personally, I guess, this is actually good. It gives me an opportunity to share my commentary throughout. I mean, I'd like to do the interview consistently, throughout. But I find that, again, for me being such a why person, I find that difficult to accept, to digest, that they would just randomly pick people. I think there has to be some rhyme or reason to things like that. I mean, even if it is maybe they were testing a bunch of people in his town, at least that would make more sense to me. So, that's something I'm going to ask, if he found out some kind of pattern with that, other people who were affected by this. I think he was saying a couple of thousand people or something. I think that's what we heard. We have to rewind the tape on that too. But I'm wondering if he should have some kind of connection with these other people as well. Also, if he is living in an area that has a lot of these, quote, maybe crazy people walking around on the sidewalk, talking to themselves, hearing voices, that makes me think, oh, here he is. Hey there.
Hello.
You know what, I'm just kind of like throwing out, because as I shared, I'm such a why person trying to figure things out all the time, and I'm wondering, since you're saying that there were maybe a lot of people hearing voices, talking to themselves, like what people would call crazies on the street. Mm-hmm. So are you growing up in maybe a low-income area, and then maybe that's why they were targeting people in that type of area, because maybe lack of resources to fight back or something?
Exactly.
Okay. There we go. I have a little bit to head on.
Like the Tuskegee experiments, a lot of experiments have always started in black communities. I don't like to throw out that kind of conspiracy truth, but that's what it is, and you never know. Nowadays I go around, I look at people in the neighborhood and, who we thought were crazy, and I look at them and I go, perhaps you aren't crazy. Perhaps you're someone who they've just been targeting for several years, and these are called, psychotronic weapons, so they had to test them on someone. So perhaps my neighborhood and several other neighborhoods were one of the first neighborhoods ever started.
Okay. So then there's my why. That satisfies me as far as the why. And have you ever gone back there and spoken to neighbors or whatever, maybe asked, do they have the same experience as you?
Well, you know what? It's quite interesting. After developing my bracelet and publishing my book, I was kind of scared of telling my friends what was going on. But when they start to hear what I was telling them, some of them are now telling me that, hey, you know what? I have a cousin who says, I'm not crazy, man. Let me get one of those bracelets. I have a friend who says, hey, man, I'm not crazy. And people have been trying to tell people for years that I'm not crazy. I'm hearing these people speak to me. They're telling me what's going on, and it just seems so unbelievable.
Okay. Okay, so that rings true to me. That feels correct. What I'm wondering is that, back to the psychic question for a minute, all right? So, do you have no connection to God, Spirit, the universe?
I used to, until I was tortured while trying to pray. I actually went to a preacher when all this was happening to me. I went to my family's church, and I said, hey, man.
How old? How old?
About 15 or 16.
Okay.
This is when I was in high school. I went to the family church, and I said, I whispered in the preacher's ear, save me, because I really thought that, hey, maybe God, this mystical God that everyone believes in, would stop what's going on with me. After being baptized, You know, I began to pray, and these people tortured me, you know, horrendously for several minutes, you know, and they would tell me things like, oh, he's not going to help you, referring to God, you know, the typical, you know, God, everyone refers to God as a man. So they're telling me he's not going to help you. He doesn't help anyone. And, you know, after being on my knees trying to pray, and I'm feeling my brain like it's being electrocuted, and I'm running through the house and there's nowhere I can go. I had scholarships to the University of Kentucky, and all this is being taken from me because of what's being done to me. I really gave up my whole belief of, you know, God and any other kind of, you know, mystical beings. You know, my belief became in these people with directed energy weapons, you know, are torturing me, or whoever's doing this using satellites, they're torturing me. You know, at the time, I didn't know it was called directed energy weapons, I'll be quite honest. But they told me as a child that they're using satellites. You know, that was the first time that I've ever known that they were using satellites. And as I got older, that's when I found out that it's called directed energy weaponry. Funny story about that. The person speaking to me said, it's ironic. The weapons we're using against you are the initials of your last name. And I really didn't know what the hell they were talking about until I did some research, and I went, DEW, directed energy weapons, you know. And then they started to try to tell me perhaps that's why you're a target, and, you know, perhaps because you were in an interracial relationship, that's why you're being targeted. But my rational mind always let me know that they've been torturing me since I was a child. So any excuse you tried to give me of, you know, anything I did or anything, you know, anything that I've been a part of as an adult or while I was growing up is bullshit as to why you're doing this to me. You know what I mean?
Okay, so we talked about the God thing for a minute, because I just want to just follow this chain of thought for a second. There are going to be some people underneath my videos, because this always goes hand in hand with the Illuminati talk, is that, do you think that, did you ever think, since you were like a praying man, did you ever think that then maybe this was Satan or something, some kind of dark, well, clearly it is dark energy, but were you ever thinking this was a Satan thing? We might have just lost him again. Yeah. You know, we're getting there, guys. It may take a 4-hour interview, but we will get there. This may be my sole activity, my main activity today, but I will get it done. Same thing with Tyrone. He's like, I will get this, we will do this interview today. So we're just trekking on. Seems like he's part here, part not, because we can see his picture. Right, maybe I'll talk to his picture. Hello, Tyrone. What do you think? Did you think that this was Satan, Tyrone? I don't know if you could see that, but that's kind of funny. I was just eating his picture. Okay, so we've gathered that this was maybe a targeting of black, low income to test this weaponry, and how he's found some neighbors, cousins, whatever, that have had this experience too. What I don't understand is that, you know, I mean, so, you know, and I've experienced this with some students that come to me too, is that they don't realize how gifted they are. They don't realize these like special intuitive gifts that they have. They just feel weird, different. They have different experiences, and it ends up that they are just, their gifts are just not being recognized. That's one of my gifts, is to recognize other people's gifts. So it's interesting to me on how, I don't know, to some people I think the psychic gifts conversation is so foreign, which is, it's like so everyday for me, but I understand that, and it definitely does seem like he's having a different experience there, but for my own left brain reasoning, I need to rule that out, that we're not being confused of that. So, you know, it's 3:42. I have not had lunch yet. I'm kind of hungry. When we first were in contact, we were going to do this at 12. I was like, okay, better put away my lunch and hurry up, because I thought we were going to do the interview right then. Little did I know, I could have still kept warming it up. I could have chowed down while we were doing all this technical stuff. But, you know, it's okay. I'll survive. I'll survive with a late lunch. I'll be okay. All right, Tyrone, we're ready for you. Back to you, Tyrone. We're getting there, bit by bit. We are getting there, because we're troopers. So, what else can I share with you today? Let's fix those bra straps. Let's fix the hair. Oh, looks like it's a nice day out today. I haven't really been out because I've been taking care of this, but it does look like a nice day from the window. You know, what's interesting actually, what he shared was that they would tell him, they would give him little hints. Hey, it's done through the satellite. Hey, this weaponry is the last initials of your name. So again, this is what we see a theme through all of these like false flags, all these hoaxes, again, whatever you want to call it, is that we are seeing a theme of like this truth being leaked out, of them not really holding it as such secrets, or of some people, I guess, temporarily having a conscience and saying, hey, explaining a little bit what's happening to the person. Hey, this is technology, this is through the satellite of what's happening to you. And then how they're giving them, hey, this is like your last name. So, you know, that's kind of interesting. Now, you have to ask yourself, like, who do you think is doing this stuff? I think that that is probably CIA. I don't know for sure. We're going to ask him what he thinks. But I don't know. Who else would be using that weaponry? Maybe part of the military, testing it out. Because, you know, here's the thing. The moral way to be doing this stuff, the way to be doing this stuff in integrity is that you ask people to volunteer to be part of these test studies. And then for a period of time, you compensate them, or you tell them that you're not going to compensate them, and you test out this weaponry. And that's how you do it. But they think, well, no one's going to volunteer for this. You must be crazy. No one's going to volunteer for this. So we have to pick random people out of our population. And who are we picking? Maybe the lowest of low. If this is on their totem pole, if they're testing on a black population, this is not Blair saying this. This is what he was confirming. And that this is how a lot of studies are done, I guess supposedly, is on the black population first. I'm sure other populations are having this being done to them too, but or other like ethnicities, demographics are having this done to them. But it's really quite sad, you know. Like these people are in a poor demographic, in a poor location. Maybe they're down and out. Maybe some people can be looking at them as victims, and let's victimize the victims because they're already in that certain situation. They have limited resources to fight back. People are not going to be believing them. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but let's go after them. And I think in general, that would be the thought about, you know, maybe poor people or homeless people. Let's do testing. And again, if you do research back to like World War II era or after that, when they, you know, it's called Project Mockingbird, or no, Project Paperclip, when instead of actually bringing to justice, putting in jail or killing or whatever, a bunch of the perpetrators, the Nazis, what the U.S. did was, under this Project Paperclip, was bring them over to the U.S. and had them kind of free range. They were then working for our government and doing testings and sharing their psychological research, whatever kind of mind control, and these different tests. So these people, and maybe they became teachers or whatever, they filtered into our population. Whereas these people should have been reprimanded, maybe they should have been put to death, they should have been put away. But instead, our government is like, well, they're too valuable. We need to get them before Russia gets them. And it's kind of like they gave them amnesty, or they did give them amnesty, and then they're running loose in our world. These are corrupt individuals. These are people out of integrity running loose in our world. So now what happens? Well, here we're seeing corruption coming straight from our government. Hey, we're not going to run a test. Hey, we're not going to ask people. Because before they were doing tests, like if we're going back to World War II, these Nazis were doing tests on Jews, on gypsies, on maybe homosexuals, on all different people mentally ill, on people who they classified as being less than or whatever. They were taking them against their will and doing tests on them. So now we still see that, you know, and also they were all, again, the United States has a history of doing research projects on people who are in mental institutions or even prisons. Now, I think certain things like that are debatable, you know, whether, depending on what crimes people committed in prison, are they allowed to be test subjects then? Because, hey, you committed a crime and now we could do whatever kind of torturous things to you? Or is that just inhumane across the board? And that's something that you have to decide for yourself. It's something you have to ask yourself. That's something that you have to decide for yourself. Now, with this, so clearly what we're seeing, that the government is still testing on their population. They're not telling people, they're not asking for consent. It's clear that this is corruption. This is clear this is coming from wounded people, people who are not healed. That's why you guys hear me say all the time, you need to heal yourself. Otherwise, you're susceptible to this corruption. It can happen to anyone. Even someone who's healed has to constantly check themselves and ask, what are your intentions? What are the motivations? Because you know, inside the government, these people were told, whoever are running these tests, doing this direct energy weaponry, is being told, well, you're doing this on these people, on this population, because it's for the good of all. You know, and what does that mean? Well, where can we possibly use this energy technology, a weaponry? Well, what are people brains you know, brainwashed to believe? Well, because we supposedly have so many enemies across the world, we have to use this technology, this weaponry on our enemies. So if we're going to use it on our enemies, then we need to take some test subjects from our own population to see if it even works. Well, dude, use it on your fucking self. Why don't you guys use it on yourself if you think it's such a good idea? Why don't you guys volunteer? But they know that this won't happen. It's the same idea on how they test certain things, pharmaceuticals or even cosmetics, on animals. These aren't, quote, people and beings that can give their consent. It's kind of an idea of like, we're more powerful than you, we're bigger than you, so we're going to just take animals, we're going to put you in cages, and we're going to test things ourselves on you. And that's the same mentality of the government, military, not everybody, but the corruption that it is, that it's like, oh, well, it's for the good of the whole. So we take a few of these people, we kind of trap them, because clearly this guy was a victim, a prisoner, and it's for the good of the whole, because that way it keeps the United States safe. And that's how these people get down this, like, go down this kind of like rabbit hole of deceit, deception, of lies, of corruption, because the way that it's being shared with them, and then they're not thinking it through, is that they're just getting sucked in that way. So I don't know if he is actually going to be joining us again, or if he's having, what has happened to Tyrone. Let me see a thing here. Okay, he hasn't contacted here. Oh, like a stiff neck already. Well, I will check my email. Maybe he has sent an email there, but I think he's probably just going to try to come back. I'm going to end the broadcast and we'll restart when he is back with us. Stay tuned.